Alright guys, Mark here, and today we're playing something a little different. We're playing Risen Kingdom. Just came out on Steam on February 28th. It's a real-time strategy game. Quite a bit like Age of Empires 2, I would say. Although I haven't seen a lot of people comparing it to that game at all. But more cartoony fantasy art, same kind of medieval era. There is resource gathering, there's building units, there is defending, there's upgrading, research, basically all of the kind of the core mechanics that you'd find in Age of Empires 2, but maybe dummied down a little bit. There's been quite a few people that compared this game to playing a mobile game, which in some respects it is kind of simplistic. It's not gonna maybe satisfy your need for being a hardcore gamer by any means, but it is certainly fun, and for the price, like, you can get it here in Canadian dollars anyway, $11.49. So I would assume probably about $10 or $9.99 US for you watchers that buy games in that currency. It's I guess a good deal. Like, it gives you somewhere around the kind of 5-hour mark of playability, if that. So a good, I guess, value for your dollar. In terms of replay value, I'm going to say not as much, just because basically the game is a single player game. You play through missions and you can play at different difficulty levels, but for the most part it's probably a one-shot go through or go around, and probably you're not going to be playing it more than once. I mean, maybe at some point the devs would put out more content for the game, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. So buying it the way it is, it's got 2, 4, 6, 8 missions, so it's not going to give you a whole lot of play time, but it's nice to pick up if you want to play, say, an Age of Empires style game without the time commitment. This certainly gives you that, and it's not that bad. I found the game not to be buggy or anything. The AI maybe isn't the greatest, but I mean, a lot of times in these kind of games and at this price point, you can't really expect a whole lot from it. So, you know, here we are building some defenses. In the tutorial, you learn about building different buildings, learn about upgrading certain buildings as well, so that makes it easy to get into the game later on. The one thing I found with this game that's quite a bit different than what you'd expect in an Age of Empires game, any of the resource gathering, so say wood or ore, that kind of thing, they have specific spots on the map. Like, you can see kind of a little bit off to the center on the left there's a little pickaxe. That's where you can put a mine. There's one at the top of the map there above the barracks. There's a log cutting thing for a sawmill. So those kind of items are fixed. The nice thing though in this game, you don't have to worry about, I guess, anybody. Like in Age of Empires, a big problem was you'd maybe have a forest surrounding your base, but as you harvested the trees, all of a sudden you didn't have a forest. So you don't have to worry about, I guess, your resource gathering destroying the natural wall around your base, but as a trade-off, it also means it limits the amount of space you have around your base, so for building and upgrades. And it's not so much a problem here in the tutorial, but in later missions there are issues. So here's a horde of the undead attacking the base. At this kind of basic level, you're just fighting regular zombies, but I've seen shooters, I've seen ones that kind of use magic, ones with armor on them. So you'll find different kinds of enemies as it goes along, and it makes it a little more challenging. And there's not one strategy that really works for all characters, but I mean, you'll figure it out. It's not rocket science. There was one mission where I did actually get killed, but for the most part, it's not that hard. The one mission I did get killed on, it was my own fault. I got a little too eager, ran through things a little too quickly, and made the mistake of getting too close and getting surrounded and killed. So that would happen in real life if that's the way you handled the game. So my own fault, I can accept that. So you see here, one of the things you'll do quite often on these maps is repair all your defenses. So that's just simply pushing the R key on the keyboard. There is a button above the mini map, but just remember the R key fixes everything, provided there are no enemies nearby. So right now we're learning about upgrading or research in terms of units, upgrading at the barracks there, better archers, and then better swordsmen as well. There is a research tree here. There also, I don't remember if you find it here in the tutorial or not, but you can get research points, and over time you get different upgrades as well, and you get to choose from 2 different options on basically on a research tree, which gives you some flexibility depending on your playstyle. You know, maybe you need some extra money to build more units. Well, you can get that as part of your research, or you can pick, for example, maybe all of the resource gathering items give you 15% more resources. So there's usually a short-term option, like, you know, immediate kind of benefit, or ones that give you a better benefit over time. And as for enemies, so there is the undead, which you'll fight hordes of typically in the evening, but it can happen during the daytime on maps where you fight them. And then there's also basically neutral creatures out there, which typically they guard resources. Like in this case, you can see just behind the trees there is an actual set of trees there, or wood resource. You'll find that a lot of times between fighting the undead hordes, you'll be trying to conquer these monsters or take them out to get the resources so that you can continue to augment your base to have better luck against the horde. So here we're actually building a ore pit or a quarry to get ore. We upgraded our castle up to level 2, so then you need ore. The nice thing too, once you do get level 2 in research, you can build stone houses, which house a few more people, make a little bit more money, but take up the same amount of space. Like, the one thing, just like any other kind of game like this, is a continuous fight over resource management, not only for having enough housing for your population, but getting enough wood, getting enough ore, getting enough gold revenue to maintain basically your settlement. Because what happens is, if you fall short on any of the resources, kind of in the top right corner there of the screen, things will start to deteriorate. So say, for example, you don't have enough ore and you end up in a situation where you don't have any left, and like you're not making enough and you don't have any left in your bank, then your buildings that depend on ore, so for example your castle, if you make stone houses, those kind of things, they start to deteriorate, so they take damage and eventually can be destroyed because of the lack of resources. So you always need to be wary that you don't expand too quickly. You also have to make sure that, you know, you're also growing at some reasonable pace, because without kind of growth of your settlement, you won't be able to get the resources you need to maintain adequate defenses and be able to defend your base from the undead hordes. So it's kind of always we'll say a give and take, and a dance of sorts, where you're forever trying to keep up with having enough resources, keeping up with having enough troops, and keeping up with having enough of everything to kind of make your base work. So these spike walls that we're making are supposed to slow down the zombie horde, or undead horde, sorry, and damage them a little bit. They tend to be pretty fragile too. Like, they don't take much damage before they're broken, so be aware of that. Actually, most buildings in this game don't take much damage before they break. So you got to be careful that you're forever repairing things and don't let the enemies get too close. But I mean, at this stage of the game where we're in a tutorial, or the tutorial mode, it's not too intense. There are other missions that we'll see in future videos here that it gets a little hairy sometimes just because of the number of zombies, or sorry, undead, and basically the size of your army. Like in most cases in this game, you have a handful of troops, unlike say a game like Age of Empires where you'd have 50, 60 units. This, I think the most we've ever had is 10 or 12. So quite a different scope. Like, I mean, you got to be a little more careful with how you approach these enemies, how you take them out. You can't just run in there with your 6 guys and hope to defeat 10 or 20 undead. That doesn't work that way. So one of the tactics you can use, like you see, I lured these neutral monsters closer to my archery towers so that the archers can take them out without me losing any of my soldiers. And it helps to thin out the crowd there too. So instead of having 2 of my guys against 3 of theirs, now it'll be 2 against 1, which I should be able to beat with no problems. So these missions too have their main objectives. You have to survive the undead hordes, but there are also side objectives like collecting all the resources, or maybe freeing prisoners, or taking out all the neutral monsters. Like, it map to map it varies, and by kind of obtaining some of these objectives, you get a better score at the end of the map. So, and really in most cases, attaining them as well gives you know, access to better resources, more money, that kind of thing. So there is some kind of tangible value to taking the time to explore the entire map and clear out all the enemies. So this is the last big horde here. If you notice, having these towers gives you better range for archers. And that's it. So there you have it, Risen Kingdom. We just finished playing the tutorial and we'll go through the other missions, but it's not a very hard game. So thank you for watching today. We'll catch you in the next video.